The speech that I'm refuting had the main claim that modern-day global warming is just another step in a process that has occurred many times over the history of the Earth. His claims are that today's warming is a normal stage in nature's cycle, that cooling is a natural counter to Earth's warming, and that the warming today continues these trends. After examining it, my proposition is that his points are insufficient to support his claim. For his first point, the opponents introduced the medieval warm period, using it analogously with today's weather. He tried to prove his statement by discussing how crops flourished in Europe, and this temperature increase brought them out of the Dark Ages. He failed to mention, however, that the warming period was not global, but mainly in Europe. The IPCC stated that it has limited utility in describing trends in hemispheric or global mean temperature changes in the past centuries. His information may have been correct decades ago, however, it is much out of date now. The first paragraph of the Medieval Warm Period article on absoluteastronomy.com, which is one of his reference sites, clearly states that the idea of global warming, of global or hemispheric medieval warm period that was warmer than today, however, has turned out to be incorrect. So though warming may be a natural stage in Earth's life, it has never happened this drastically before, and this warming does not follow the normal oscillations of cooling and warming of the past. He continued by offering that temperatures during the warm period were half a degree Celsius higher than they are now. This is not true. From the National Climate Data Center of the U.S. Department of Commerce, a study of the medieval warm period showed to actually be a degree cooler now. In fact, another one of the opponent's own reference sites, The Resilient Earth, said that the late 20th and 21st centuries are likely the warmest period the Earth has seen in 1,200 years. The opponent also says that the ocean surface temperature was almost 1 degree Celsius warmer than today, citing the Resilient Earth again. Though this may be true, the website also explains how the difference in ocean temperatures between the equator and higher latitudes is much more pronounced today, which means that there's a decrease in heat transfer by the atmosphere, showing a drastic change in oceanic atmospheric relationships, something that has not occurred in Earth's past to such an extent. So although the water may have been a little bit warmer, it's not comparable to today's conditions, and still proves that we are headed for more drastic global warming than ever. His last point on the claim stated that the warm period helps the Vikings settle in Greenland by the melting ice. Considering that the benefits of melting ice do not prove any pattern in historical global warming, I do not consider this point to be at all effective for his claim. The opponent's second claim is that cooling is the natural counter to Earth's warming. Though this may be true, it does not prove that the drastic warming we are experiencing now is something that has happened before. He uses the Little Ice Age as an example of a pattern of heating and cooling, but this is a sole event. Using one event of cooling and warming does not prove a cycle, only that it has occurred once in history, especially since there are no signs that there will be any cooling after this current global warming. He cites temperatures getting cooler after the warm period, which is correct, but it is irrelevant to his claim that global warming is part of a process that has happened many times, as this has only occurred once in recorded history. The opponent's third claim is that warming today continues these trends. As I stated before, temperatures are much higher, and ocean temperatures very drastically different than those recorded for the medieval time period. The only similarity is that temperatures did increase over some period of time. This is not effective enough to prove a pattern, as one could say that since we have seasons that get warmer and cooler, the same will happen as the Earth as a whole. Both are stretching one example way too far. His final example is that wine grapes were grown in Europe as far north as southern Britain, comparing to today's climate, which supports grapes as far as Gotland in Sweden. Gotland is far further north than the cities of southern Britain, further proving that this warming does not follow the pattern of the past warming and is much more drastic than anything seen in history. In conclusion, his examples cannot be paralleled to today's climate change. He has out-of-date information, uses incorrect information to reason with, and doesn't offer enough examples to actually demonstrate a pattern. With these issues, I hope you'll understand why I feel that his reasoning was ineffective in proving his claim that modern-day global warming is just another step in the process that has occurred many times over the history of the Earth. Thank you.
right, the structure is very clearly labeled. It's pretty easy to follow. I thought that you challenged the analogy on the warming period pretty effectively. You've got some good information on that point. The fact that the advocate's own evidence seems to undermine that argument, I think, also enhances the credibility of your position on that point. The other periods that you're talking about, the past warming periods, you challenged the analogy being drawn from them. There's an explanation about the ocean temperatures and heat transfer that I think needs a little bit more explanation because you're kind of rushing through that. I'm willing to dismiss that there are advantages. I don't think the Vikings are going to be migrating again either, so that's an advantage doesn't necessarily benefit us all that much now. We'll get all those Swedes moving to Canada. All right. I thought there was a good, clear transition to the second point. There's a little bit of a challenge on the Little Ice Age as being insufficient. You want to be careful. I think this would be one of those arguments that if we were having a debate and we were having continued discussion on this, the contrast would be, what are the inferences being made from on the other side? What kinds of examples are they reasoning from? Because I think that there are a lot of the same kinds of arguments there. And on the last point, when you're talking about temperature records, for instance, I think you're going to run into the same kind of problem. We don't have to worry about that now because there's no resubstantiation and we're not talking about a policy debate. But I'm just saying if it went further, there's more room for argument. But I think you raised the right kind of argument on that point. On the last point, I did like the challenge on the information about the wine growing and the grapes and that kind of thing. You've got factual data on this. I assume that you are correct. My knowledge of geography is not sufficient to be able to dispute that. I could look it up, too, but that would be one of those things that I think you could. That's what you could say. I map questioned it, and look, it's 4 degrees latitude higher than the other. Boom, that would solve that. That's my only quibble with that. I thought it was pretty clear. I thought you had an excellent summary of what the argument was, and that's a good way to leave an argument. Summarize, boom, 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 here are the points that I've made, and that's why you can't reach that conclusion. And that's a good oral communication skill there. All right, thank you.